this is a newborn baby. It's possible that it shows early signs of cranial deformation because you see the flattening of the forehead. And then on the left side, we see again a classic Paracas elongated skull. Now, a normal human skull has this suture coming across this way and this suture coming back that way. That's what every living human being, as far as I know, on the planet, what their skull suture formation is, but it has an extra one coming down the forehead. Again, it's not a crack, it's a suture line, and any physician who's looked at that says that's incredibly rare. That's a genetic anomaly. That's just one of the genetic anomalies of the Paracas. And then on this side, we see that it only has one visible suture line coming across this way. So either this suture, which is supposed to be there, never formed, or that it fused very quickly. In a normal human being, that suture can fuse, but it doesn't disappear like that up until someone is likely something like 80 years old, and it'll never fully fuse like that. So this again is another genetic anomaly of the Paracas. And quite intriguingly, the one in the middle at the bottom. If any of you have heard of the Star Child skull, that was the custodian of that was Lloyd Pye. That skull looks very much like the Star Child. It's smaller, but you see the eye sockets are vertically extended. So very strange shape. We can't really tell where the jawbone connected properly with it. No evidence of teeth. And so it is a genetic anomaly that we hope to be able to DNA test at some point in time. But if you compare a photograph of this one with Lloyd Pye's Star Child skull, you'll see very similar physical characteristics.
What age would that have been?
We don't know.
Because I'm wondering how one would keep a child alive that's nose and eyes and jaw is so oddly connected.
Yeah, well, if it's a human, then it would have died at about 2 years, based on the size of the skull.
Right.
Would have died at about 2 years of age. But so it died early. And the interesting thing is the person who found it, of course, found it in an ancient cemetery. The skeleton was there, but he said as soon as he picked the skull up, a gust of wind came and basically the whole body just blew away as dust. So that's of course what you want to see. You want to see the skull and the skeleton and compare both with a normal baby of that age. But he said for some strange reason the bone of the skeleton was so fine that it just turned to powder.
What is the reason they haven't been carbon dated or DNA tested yet?
There are no proper DNA or carbon-14 testing facilities in Peru or Bolivia. So in general, you have to send them to the United States or Europe. And to do proper DNA testing of ancient skulls, anything, according to DNA analysis, anything older than 100 years is regarded as being ancient DNA. And so something 1,000 or 2,000 years old has to be sent to one of 10 labs in the world that can do that properly. There are only 10 labs that can do super ancient DNA like this. We've contacted all of them, and most of them never responded because they don't want to get involved with something that looks like that, because then they believe they will lose their credibility. Fortunately, we have a laboratory in Canada that is independently run and another one in the United States, and they're both quite intrigued with this phenomenon, so they've agreed to do the DNA testing for us. It's a very complicated process because most people say, look, I can have my DNA tested. It's not a big deal. It costs $199. I just mail a sample even of the lining of the inside of my mouth to a lab, and within 2 weeks I get results. But that's the difference between someone who's alive and someone who's extremely dead. if you are alive, your DNA strands are perfectly intact. And as you know, DNA is incredibly complicated in terms of the spiral helix. But as soon as you die, your DNA starts to break down. And after 2,000 years, it's the equivalent of taking a beautiful DNA strand and putting it into a blender for 5 minutes. Because you get, not only do you get desiccation as the result of death, which causes organic material to break down, but then you also have bacteria infestation, because bacteria immediately will go after a dead body. So then you get the bacteria DNA mixed in with the human DNA, and only the finest laboratories in the world, that's the first job they do, is to separate the bacterial markers from the DNA itself, and then you're left with what's left. And what you're left up with is tiny segments of DNA that then have to be reconnected through a computer program. And that's why there are only, at this point, 10 labs in the world that can do it, but luckily we have 2 of them working with us.
So if not done properly, it could come as non-human DNA, but that could just be bacteria and other anomalies, right?
Yeah, the thing is that all known human haplogroups, which is your genetic ancestry, have been recorded, all that are known. So that's what the program does, is it simply takes the strand and then compares it with every haplogroup on the planet, and then it writes up a report telling you what percentage of what haplogroup. The intriguing thing is that basically all Native American people are of haplogroups A, B, C, and D, and that is the result of the movement of their ancestors from Siberia across the land bridge into North America. But the initial tests we've done of the Paracas are showing Middle Eastern DNA showing up and Northern European DNA showing up. And that's not something that we've published yet because it's very controversial. That's why we're doing multiple testing. So we'll have, hopefully next month, as in October of 2017, at least 50 different samples thoroughly examined. And once those come in, then we'll compare that with what we have, and then 2 official reports will be written up. Now, of course, people say, what about alien DNA? Well, the main laboratory database in the United States, which is the World Depository of Human DNA, as far as we know, do not have alien DNA in their collection. So all that would show up would be strand unknown or combination unknown. And the baby that we showed you before, there are several spikes in its DNA where the program said, I don't know what this is. So that's either a subgroup of humanity that have not been identified, or it is the possibility of extraterrestrial ancestry.